When I was 26 years old, my father sent me a letter. Not a conversation, not a phone call. A letter, through his attorney, informing me that my shares in the family business had been reassigned to my younger brother, and that I should consider myself no longer part of the company's succession plan. No explanation, no meeting, just a letter. I had worked for that company for 4 years. My brother had been the favorite his entire life. Better athlete, more charming, looked more like our father. He was the kind of son my father had always wanted, and I was, by his accounting, the kind of son he'd gotten instead. I didn't fight the letter. I didn't call. I built my own life, my own career, my own version of moving on. And then, 10 years later, he called me. He needed a kidney transplant. My brother, the chosen son, had refused to get tested. So I agreed to test, and the results came back. And everything my father had ever believed about his family, about who deserved what, about who was his, about what his legacy meant, and who it belonged to, came apart in a single lab report. I am Sif, and I want to tell you what a DNA test does to a story that took 40 years to build. My father, I'll call him Gerald, is 69. My younger brother is Marcus, 34. My mother, Carol, passed away 4 years ago. I need to start there, with my mother, because this story is ultimately about her and what she knew and what she chose to do with what she knew. And I want to be fair to her in the way that you try to be fair to someone when they're no longer here to explain themselves. My mother was a quiet woman. Not meek, quiet. There's a difference. She had a private interior life that she protected carefully and that I spent my entire childhood trying to understand from the outside. She loved us, me and Marcus, with a consistency that never varied regardless of how Gerald's attention did. And Gerald's attention varied enormously. My father is a self-made man in the specific way that some self-made men become. Proud, conditional, and fundamentally unable to separate love from performance. He built a regional logistics company from the ground up in his 30s, grew it through my childhood, and by the time I was in high school, it was genuinely successful. He had opinions about success. He had opinions about what a son should look like in relation to success. Marcus looked like those opinions. Athletic, confident, socially fluid. He had the external markers of the kind of son Gerald had always imagined producing. I was quieter, more academic, less interested in the performance of ambition. I wasn't a failure by any reasonable measure. I just wasn't the version of success Gerald had scripted. I joined the company at 22 because Gerald asked me to. I gave it 4 years. Real years, working years, the kind where you learn the operations and build the relationships and quietly become the institutional memory of a place. I was good at it. The people I worked with liked me. The clients responded well to me. None of that mattered. At 26, I received a letter through Gerald's attorney informing me that my minority shares in the company had been reassigned to Marcus. No meeting, no call, a letter. The reason given, in the attorney's careful language, was that Gerald wished to consolidate operational decision-making within a unified succession structure. What it meant in plain language was, I want your brother to have it. I did not fight it. I consulted my own attorney, understood that my shares had vested only partially in the reassignment, while painful, was within the terms of my original agreement. I left the company. I didn't speak to Gerald for the better part of 2 years. Then I started speaking to him again, not because anything had changed, but because my mother asked me to, and I couldn't deny her anything. We had a functional relationship from that point. Not warm, functional. Holiday calls, occasional dinners, the maintenance of something that looked like family from the outside. My mother never explained it. She never apologized for his choices or defended them. She would sometimes look at me in a way that I couldn't read and say things like, "You've always been stronger than you know, Seth," which I took as comfort and only later understood as something else entirely. She passed away 4 years ago, quietly, from a cardiac event, in her sleep. The kind of ending that gives you no chance to ask the questions you've been deferring. Gerald called me 18 months ago. We'd spoken maybe 4 times in the previous year. The call felt different from the first sentence. A flatness in his voice that I hadn't heard before, an absence of the performative authority that had always characterized his communication. He had been diagnosed with kidney disease. Progressive. He was on the transplant list, but his condition made finding a compatible living donor preferable to waiting. He had already asked Marcus. Marcus had refused to test. Gerald didn't explain why. I didn't ask. I had my guesses about what that refusal represented after a lifetime of being the chosen son and suddenly being asked to prove it with his body, but I kept those to myself. Gerald asked if I would consider getting tested. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. It wasn't warm. It wasn't forgiving. It was complicated in the specific way that only interactions with people who have hurt you can be, a mixture of residual pain and the simple human fact that he was sick and he had called me, and I was still, despite everything, his son. Or I thought I was. I said I'd think about it. I called my doctor. I did some research. I agreed to the initial compatibility screening. The process for a living kidney donor involves multiple stages, a blood type screening, then a tissue typing test, then a more detailed cross-match. I made it to the second stage before the results stopped the process entirely. The genetic markers in the tissue typing were inconsistent with a direct biological relationship. I called the testing physician and asked for clarity. She was careful. She said the markers were inconsistent with a first-degree paternal biological relationship. She recommended I speak with a genetic counselor. I already understood what she was saying. I was not Gerald's biological son. I sat with that for 3 days before I did anything. 3 days of being alone with a fact that reorganized everything I thought I understood about my own history. My mother had been with someone else. At some point in the years before my birth, she had been with someone other than Gerald, and I was the result of that relationship. She had kept this for 37 years. She had taken it with her when she died. And Marcus, who had refused to test, who was 4 years younger than me, who had a different physical type than either Gerald or I had the strong, unverified suspicion that he was not Gerald's son either. I asked Gerald to do a direct paternity test with me. I told him what the medical results had suggested. I explained it clearly and without emotion because it was the only way I could explain it without falling apart. There was a long silence. Then Gerald said, "Send me the information." He took the paternity test privately. He also, separately, took one with Marcus. I don't know who initiated that second test or what prompted it, but both results came back the same week. Neither of us were his biological children. I don't know what Gerald's process was in the weeks following. I know that he has a therapist he began seeing around that time, which is the most humanizing thing I can tell you about him. I know that his relationship with Marcus became, from what I've heard through indirect channels, something that neither of them has been able to fully repair. I know that 6 weeks after the paternity results, Gerald's attorney contacted both Marcus and me with a notice that Gerald had amended his will. The company, the estate, and all associated assets, the thing Gerald had spent 40 years building and 10 years making clear was meant for Marcus, had been left entirely to a regional children's literacy foundation that Gerald had apparently been a quiet donor to for many years. Both of his sons received nothing. I want to be precise about what I felt when I read that notice. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't grief exactly. It was something closer to recognition. The legacy Gerald had been so certain of, the one he had organized his love and his rejection and his whole identity around, had turned out to be a story he was telling himself. The lab result didn't destroy his family. It revealed that the version of family he had been protecting had never fully existed. He is still on the transplant list. I'm not his match, obviously. I check the transplant registry news occasionally. I don't know what I would feel if I saw his name. I don't know what I would feel about a lot of things right now. My mother kept a secret for 40 years. I've spent months trying to be angry at her for it and not quite getting there. She looked at me in a way I couldn't read. She told me I was stronger than I knew. I think she knew, somewhere, that I was going to need to be. Many people have asked if I know who my biological father is. I don't. I've started a process of looking gently. I'm not in a rush. It's a strange thing to begin a search for a person who might not know I exist. Someone asked if I have any relationship with Gerald now. We have spoken twice since the will notice. Short calls. He sounds diminished in a way I haven't heard before. I don't have warmth for him. I don't know if I ever will. But I don't have active hatred either. Someone asked what I thought my mother would say if she could. I think she would apologize. I think she would explain. I think she would ask me not to let the secret be what I remember most about her. I'm trying. That's the most honest answer I have. Gerald spent 40 years building a legacy. He decided who deserved it. He wrote letters through attorneys. He reassigned shares. He chose his favorite and made sure everyone knew it. He was so certain about his family, about what it meant, about what it was worth and who it belonged to. And then a lab report, filed as part of a kidney donor screening that the son he'd rejected agreed to take, told him that the family he had organized his entire life around had never been exactly what he believed it was. The legacy went to a children's literacy foundation. His 2 sons got nothing. And Seth, the quiet one, the one who got the letter, the one who showed up to test when the chosen son walked away, is somewhere right now trying to be fair to a mother who kept a secret for 40 years and took it with her. He said she told him he was stronger than he knew. He's finding out she was right. So, jury, Who in this story do you feel the most for? Seth, who lost a father before he knew the truth. Gerald, who lost everything he believed was real. Or Carol, who spent a lifetime carrying something she never got to explain. Because this one doesn't have a villain. It just has a lab report. And 40 years of consequences that nobody was fully ready for. Drop your verdict in the comments. The floor is completely yours.